In October 2014, the United States and Philippines had successfully concluded their annual military drills, or Balikatan. 5 US warships, including the USS Peleliu, had docked at Subic Bay, and hundreds of troops were enjoying rest and recreation in nearby Olongapo City. However, on the night of the 11th of October, a 26-year-old trans woman would die in a motel at the hands of a serving US Marine. The incident would spark an international diplomatic incident and a social reckoning in the Philippines. Today we examine the case of Jennifer Laude. Jennifer Laude was a 26-year-old Filipina trans woman. She lived with her mother Jolita in Olongapo City. In her teenage years, she decided to become a trans woman and was known to her friends by her nickname Ganda, the Tagalog word for beautiful. Laude had attended college but had lost interest in her studies, opting instead to earn money. She worked at a local hair salon and also engaged in online sex work to help her family in a country beset by poverty. Olongapo is well known for its red light district, and many who work there are trans women, something that increases the risk factors. An encounter with the wrong client can be deadly. Friends and family described her as generous. When the roof of the family home was destroyed in Typhoon Hagupit, Laude paid for the repairs. Local men were uninterested in pursuing a long-term relationship, and while she met foreign men, it came with caveats. One British man was unbothered, but explained he didn't want to be seen in public with her, and the relationship eventually ended. She then saw a Korean man, but it also ended as she was too afraid to tell him she was trans. Laude then met a German man, Mark Susselbeck, on an online travel forum. They spent time together, and the relationship became more serious. They travelled before he finally proposed to her on stage at a local mall. By the summer of 2014, they planned to move to Germany and marry. She would have already left the country by the time of her death, were it not for an issue with her visa. Private First Class Joseph Scott Pemberton was a 19-year-old Marine from New Bedford, Massachusetts. He was among 3,500 US troops in the Philippines, taking part in the military drills. Pemberton was stationed aboard the USS Peleliu, a US Navy Wasp-class amphibious assault ship and part of the US Navy's 7th Fleet. By October 11th, the drills had ended and Pemberton was on R&R. That night, he went with fellow Marines to the Ambience Disco Bar. It was here that he met Jennifer Laude, who was also in the bar with another trans friend, Barbie Galviro. The pair chatted for only a few minutes before leaving the bar together, their exit being captured on the bar's CCTV cameras. Pemberton, Laude and Galviro headed to the Cell Zone Lodge, a motel located nearby. In the Philippines, motels are often considered a taboo subject, a place where couples can go for privacy and intimacy. Guests can check in under fake names, and rooms can be booked for only a few hours. The trio arrived at the motel at 10:55 p.m. After checking into a room, Galviro then left, leaving Pemberton and Laude alone. However, it was at this point, as the two became intimate, that Pemberton realised that Laude was a trans woman, something he had been unaware of up until that point. In a split second, the atmosphere in the room changed, and in a fit of anger, Pemberton struck Laude. A struggle ensued, but Pemberton easily overpowered her, putting her in an arm lock and dragging her inside the bathroom. As the struggle continued, Pemberton applied a chokehold until Laude lost consciousness. He then dunked Laude's head in the toilet bowl, an act that would seal her fate. He then abruptly left the room only 30 minutes after checking in, leaving the room door open and hailing a taxi back to his ship. Laude's body would be discovered by hotel staff a short time later. She was naked with her body partially covered from the waist down, with her head in the toilet bowl. Her neck had visible marks and was blackened with bruising from the force of the chokehold. The police would later confirm the cause of death as asphyxiation by drowning. Staff at the hotel were able to give police a description of the suspect, a foreign man, aged 25 to 30, with a military-style haircut. On board his ship, Pemberton confessed to colleagues that he may have killed someone. They initially laughed it off as a joke, until it became clear he was serious. In court testimony, Pemberton is reported to have said, "I choked it, wrapped my arms around it until it stopped moving, and dragged it towards the bathroom." Pemberton was immediately arrested and placed in the brig, before being transferred by helicopter to Camp Aguinaldo, the headquarters of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. News of the killing sparked protests as Pemberton was charged with murder. Laude's relatives claimed they were then offered 21 million pesos, or $468,000, if they agreed to lower the charge from murder to homicide, which they refused. However, Pemberton's legal team refuted this, saying no money had been offered. The case quickly became a cause célèbre, with pressure groups, celebrities, and politicians weighing in on the case. LGBT groups used the incident to highlight what they felt was a wider problem of discrimination and violence against trans women in the country. Left-wing groups also attacked what they perceived as special treatment for US troops and criticised the Visiting Forces Agreement. The VFA had been in place since 1999 and saw US troops participate in exercises in the country once a year. However, others were more muted. Some local Olongapo politicians and business leaders, while describing the incident as unfortunate, felt tourism and business sectors were being hurt with military personnel locked down on their ships, and that the city needed the economic benefits they brought. By now, Mark Susselbeck, the German fiancé of Laude, had arrived in the country. Susselbeck and the family held an emotional funeral service for Jennifer. Friends and supporters demanded justice, and then marched on Camp Aguinaldo. Once there, a relative of Jennifer, Anne Susselbeck, scaled the perimeter fence. When confronted by guards, Susselbeck then shoved Lieutenant Colonel Harold Cabinot in what was an apparent attempt to reach the cell block where Pemberton was being held in order to confront him. The event was widely captured on TV news. The Bureau of Immigration then announced that Susselbeck had been declared an undesirable alien. He subsequently fainted at an impromptu press conference when he learned he would not be able to board his Malaysian Airlines flight back to Germany. Susselbeck issued a public apology, which was accepted by authorities, but he was placed on a watch list and then deported from the country. The trial took place under intense media scrutiny. The prosecution argued that Pemberton had committed murder, that he had used excessive force in what was a transgender hate crime, citing the language he used when first arrested, describing Laude as it. The defence, however, argued that Pemberton acted in self-defence, that he had been the victim of a deception and had no disciplinary record at high school or in the Marines, and had an openly lesbian sister. On the 1st of December 2015, the Olongapo Regional Trial Court found Pemberton guilty of homicide, citing mitigating circumstances, including Laude not revealing her biological sex. The court's view was that he acted out of passion and obfuscation, and was sentenced to 6 to 12 years in prison. He was also ordered to pay a number of fines to the Laude family, totaling 4.5 million pesos, or around $82,000. On March 30th, 2016, the same court affirmed the conviction but reduced the maximum sentence from 12 years to 10 years. On September 2nd, 2020, the court granted Pemberton's partial motion of reconsideration, thereby releasing him from prison. Pemberton had served nearly 6 years in prison, but the judge stated he had served over 10 years on account of his accumulated good conduct time allowance. 5 days later, on September 7th, 2020, President Rodrigo Duterte granted an absolute pardon to Pemberton. In issuing the pardon, he said, "I am not favouring anybody, neither Pemberton nor the family. But you know this government has some small fault, because with his good behaviour, you have to count it all. He was detained for the crime, facing trial, and he was already imprisoned for the crime." The decision sparked outrage in the LGBT community and was met with a mixed reaction from the Filipino public. The Laude family were unhappy with the decision, believing Pemberton should remain behind bars, while others supported the government's decision, citing political and national considerations given the Philippines' escalating maritime and territorial disputes with China. On September 13th, 2020, Pemberton was deported to the United States on a military transport plane after he allegedly apologized to the victim's family and thanked Duterte for the pardon. He was not court-martialed on his return to the United States, but had already been discharged from the United States Marine Corps. The Jennifer Laude case was a deeply polarizing and complex one. It galvanized the LGBT community, who saw it as a transgender hate crime, and led to the release of a 2018 documentary, Call Her Ganda, about the event. It also led to political and diplomatic tensions between the two allies, while for others it was seen as an overreaction to a single case. The subsequent legal proceedings and pardon were a prime example of realpolitik, where competing geopolitical interests sometimes collide with the course of justice. The Jennifer Laude case reminds us that the pursuit of justice is far from simple. Jennifer Laude had family and friends who loved her, and nobody deserved to meet their end in the way she did. She is laid to rest at the Heritage Garden in Olongapo City. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below.